The Snow Queen. The sixth story. The Lapp Woman and the Finnish Woman. They stopped before a little cottage. It was a wretched little hovel. The roof went all the way down to the ground, and the doorway was so low that you had to creep through it on all fours. The only person at home was an old Lapp woman who was busy frying some fish over an oil lamp. The reindeer told her Gerda's story, but first he had told his own because he thought that was more interesting. Poor Gerda was so cold that she couldn't even talk. "Oh, you poor things," said the Lapp woman. "You have far to go yet. It is more than 100 miles from here to the camp of the Snow Queen. She amuses herself by shooting fireworks off every night. I shall give you an introduction to the Finnish woman who lives up there. She knows more about it all than I do, and will be able to help you. Paper I have none of, so I will write on a dried codfish." When little Gerda had eaten and was warm again, the Lapp woman wrote a few words on a dried codfish and told Gerda not to lose it. Then she tied her on to the reindeer's back again, and away they ran. "Whish, whish," it said up in the sky as the northern lights flickered and flared. They were the Snow Queen's fireworks. At last they came to the Finnish woman's house. They had to knock on the chimney, for the door was so small that they couldn't find it. Goodness me, it was hot inside. The Finnish woman walked around almost naked. She pulled off both Gerda's boots and her mittens so that the heat would not be unbearable for her. The reindeer got a piece of ice to put on its head. Then the Finnish woman read what was written on the codfish. She read it 3 times, and then she knew it by heart. The fish she put in the pot that was boiling over the fire. It could be eaten, and she never wasted anything. The reindeer told first of his own adventures and then of Gerda's. The Finnish woman squinted her intelligent eyes, but didn't utter a word. "You are so clever," said the reindeer finally. "I know you can tie all the winds of the world into 4 knots on a single thread. If the sailor loosens the first knot, he gets a fair wind. If he loosens the second, a strong breeze. But if he loosens the third and the 4th knots, then there's such a storm that the trees in the forest are torn up by their roots. Won't you give this little girl a magic drink, so that she gains the strength of 12 men and can conquer the Snow Queen?" "The strength of 12 men," laughed the Finnish woman. "Yes, I should think that would be enough." Then she walked over to a shelf and took down a roll of skin, which she spread out on the table. Strange words were written there, and the Finnish woman read and studied till the perspiration ran down her forehead. The reindeer begged her again to help little Gerda, and Gerda looked up at her with eyes filled with tears. The Finnish woman winked, then drew the reindeer into a corner, where she whispered to him while she gave him another piece of ice for his head. "Little Kay is in the Snow Queen's palace, and is quite satisfied with being there. He thinks it is the best place in the whole world. This is because he has gotten a sliver of glass in his heart and 2 grains of the same in his eyes. As long as they are there, he will never be human again, and the Snow Queen will keep her power over him." "But can't you give Gerda some kind of power so that she can take out the glass?" asked the reindeer. "I can't give her any more power than she already has. Don't you understand how great it is? Don't you see how men and animals must serve her? How else could she have come so far, walking on her bare feet? But she must never learn of her power. It is in her heart, for she is a sweet and innocent child. If she herself cannot get into the Snow Queen's palace and free Kay from the glass splinters in his eyes and his heart, how can we help her? 2 miles from here begin the gardens of the Snow Queen. Carry Gerda there and set her down by the bush with the red berries. Then come right back here and don't stand about gossiping." The Finnish woman lifted Gerda back on the reindeer's back, and he ran as fast as he could. "I don't have my boots on, and I forgot the mittens," cried Gerda, when she felt the cold making her naked feet smart. But the reindeer did not dare return. He ran on until he came to the bush with the red berries. There he put Gerda down and kissed her on the mouth. 2 tears ran down the animal's cheeks. Then he leaped and ran back to the Finnish woman as fast as he could. There stood poor Gerda, barefooted and without mittens on, in the intense Arctic cold. She entered the Snow Queen's garden and ran as fast as she could in the direction of the palace. A whole regiment of snowflakes advanced against her. They had not fallen from the sky, for that was cloudless and illuminated by northern lights. The snowflakes flew just above the snow-covered earth, and as they came nearer they grew in size. Gerda remembered how they had looked when seen through a magnifying glass. But these were even bigger and horrible to look at. They were the Snow Queen's guard. And what strange creatures they were. Some of them looked like ugly little porcupines, others like bunches of snakes all twisted together, and some like little bears with bristly fur. All of the snowflakes were brilliantly white and terribly alive. Little Gerda stopped and said her prayers. It was so cold that she could see her own breath. It came like a fine white smoke from her mouth. Then it became more and more solid and formed itself into little angels that grew as soon as they touched the ground. All of them had helmets on their heads and shields and spears in their hands. When Gerda had finished saying her prayers, a whole legion of little angels stood around her. They threw their spears at the snow monsters, and they splintered into hundreds of pieces. Little Gerda walked on unafraid, and the angels caressed her little feet and hands, so she did not feel the cold. But now we must hear what happened to little Kay. He was not thinking of Gerda, and even if he had been, he could not have imagined she could be standing right outside the palace.